I'm so excited about this title and about this series. So some of you might be like, well, hey, like what's up with that title, Straight Lines and Circles? Is this just some like trick to get us to be good at geometry? You know, like that class in school that some love and most hate, like circles, triangles, lines, postulates, all that kind of stuff. Well, no, that's not the idea. But I'd better start today by explaining the title pretty fast. So here's the idea. See if this little title makes sense. So when you go for a walk or when you're traveling by some method, maybe like a car, a boat, a plane, whatever it is, we tend to assume that our path is a straight line. Like, hey, I'm going straight. But oftentimes, our path is actually a circle or a curve. Now, I don't know if you've ever noticed that kind of thing before, but it's so easy to think you're driving straight or you're walking straight. But then you look on a map and you realize you haven't been driving straight at all. You thought you were going north, but in fact, you've been driving northwest on a curve. And now, you're not where you thought you were. You were driving on a subtle curve the whole time. You just thought you were going straight. Does that make sense? So it's like you wanted to get to Atlanta, but instead, you're in Pensacola. Like, that's not good, right? In other words, here's the point. It's easy for us to be tricked. So maybe you're on a hike in the woods, and everyone's looking to you for direction. That ever happened to you? Happens to me like all the time. No, I'm just joking about that. But you're like, hey, this way, let's go. And everyone, including you, thinks you're going straight, like maybe due east or something like that. But after 2 hours, you look over and see the same tree that you saw at the start, which means you thought you were walking straight, but in fact, you were walking in a what? A circle. So what do? You keep going and don't tell a soul, right? You just hope nobody notices. But that's the idea behind this title, Straight Lines and Circles. It turns out life is this way. We tend to assume our path is like a straight line in life. Like straightforward, like, hey, life is simple, I sort of got it, like I got this in life, I know what I'm doing. But then at some point in your life, you wake up and realize that you aren't anywhere close to where you wanted to be in life. My guess is if I had you raise your hand, a lot of you would raise your hand about the fact that's happened to you. You thought you were heading one place, and you started walking the straight path to get there. But life is more complicated than you realized. And it turns out you were walking on a circle the whole time, not a line at all. And now you've been hit by life. So, what's one to do? How do you get good at life before life bites you? Maybe some of you are like, it's too late for me. I've already been bit. Well, how do you learn before you get bit again? How do you figure out how to do life before you get hurt? Well, it turns out there's 3 books in the Bible devoted to helping us with those exact questions. Not 1, not 2, but 3 books God has given us in His Word to help. And together, they're what makes up what's called the wisdom literature of the Bible. There are these 3 books, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and Job. So the wisdom literature of all the 66 books in the Bible, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and Job. 3 books in our Bibles. Now, these 3 books are given to us in our Bibles to help us to live well. They're written to help us answer big questions, like, what kind of world are we living in? I thought it was this kind of world, but now I'm all confused because this happened. Or like, what does it look like to live well in this world? How to be good at life, things like that. Think of it maybe this way. If you want to be good at something, maybe like soccer, you've got to learn how it works, and then you've got to practice a lot. And if you want to be good at life, you've got to learn how it works, and then you've got to practice a lot. So these 3 books work together to give us some of the most complete pictures of life ever written. So here's the plan. We're going to cover Proverbs today. Then we'll do Ecclesiastes next week, and we'll end the little 3-week series with Job the following week. So today we're talking Proverbs. I'm just curious, would anybody say Proverbs is like in the top 5 favorite books of the Bible for you? Yeah, maybe some of us. Proverbs is pretty awesome. And so the goal of this series is to help you become good at life, to learn how this life works, to become wise, to become sharp. Now, I got to tell you, if you've perfected life, you won't need this series, all right? But if you don't have everything figured out yet, this is for you. So today, the book of Proverbs, If you brought a Bible with you this morning, go ahead and turn to the book of Proverbs. You can't find it, you can just look in the table of contents. It's near the middle of the Bible. Turn to Proverbs, the very first verse. And if you've ever read any of this book, you know it's filled with great little sayings, like little wise sayings, so helpful in everyday life. It's amazing how different this book is from the other books of the Bible. It's a rare treasure. It's a diamond. If you read through Proverbs, you'll see it's not like anything else in the rest of the Bible. It's just special. Now, today we're going to look at the big picture. Like, we can't cover everything right in this one sermon. But I'm going to challenge you to read the entire book of Proverbs this week. Now, that's a big challenge. But you guys are awesome, and you can do it, all right? So I just want to challenge you. This week, read the entire book of Proverbs, all 31 chapters, so you can soak it in. 31 chapters, you'll have to read about 4 chapters a day. But here's my point. Why not? It's that good, right? It's that good. So let's look at how the book opens. Let's look at how the book opens today. So the first few verses of the book of Proverbs. Check this out. It says, "These are the Proverbs of Solomon, David's son, king of Israel. Their purpose is to teach people wisdom and discipline, to help them understand the insights of the wise." Now, have you ever had a friend who could always give you amazing, unexpectedly profound advice? You ever had a friend like that? Like, every question you had about something, they had an answer to. And on top of that, you didn't have to beg them to help you. So often, like really smart people, you have to beg them to help, right? But this person may be in your life. You ever had someone like this? They had every answer to every question you had, and you didn't have to beg them to help. They actually enjoyed helping you. I had a friend like that once. It was a wonderful scenario in one specific context at one point in my life. It was earlier in my life, and the topic was leadership. How to be a good leader in life. And my friend had every answer to any question I had. It was like my own little personal life coach. He would we were just together a lot. I'd be like, "How do you do this?" "Okay, yeah." Like on and on and on. It was amazing. My own little personal life coach who had every answer, literally, who actually enjoyed helping me. Friends, the book of Proverbs is like that. In Proverbs, we learn that there's this force in the universe that can guide people into how they should live. It's a real thing. This force that Proverbs tells us about that can guide you in the way you should live. It's this force like gravity, it's so real. You can't see it, but it's real. It's this thing that Proverbs tells us about, that it affects every single thing we do in our lives. I'm going to tell you what it is in a second, but I'm going to build up a little bit more so you're dying to know what it is, all right? So it's like, check this out. This thing I'm talking about. You can't live a day without bumping into it. You can't live a day without bumping into gravity, and you can't live a day without bumping into this thing. So what is it? What is this thing that Proverbs tells us about that's so important? What's this force exactly? Well, in Hebrew, it's chokmah. In our Bibles, it's called wisdom. Wisdom. It's wisdom. Wisdom is an attribute of God. It's something God used to create the world. And it turns out wisdom has been woven into the fabric of everything and how everything works. It's as pervasive as gravity. I mean, just think about that. So for instance, wherever people are making good or right decisions, they're tapping into chokmah, to wisdom. And whenever someone's making a bad decision, they're working against chokmah, or wisdom. So work with chokmah, good results. Work against wisdom, bad results. And this phenomenon, wisdom, it's as pervasive as gravity. You can't escape it. You ignore it to your own peril. The end of Proverbs 1 says this. It says, the waywardness of fools will destroy them. But the one who listens to wisdom will live in safety and ease. It's a cause and effect pattern of life, and no one can escape it. Puts a lump in your throat, doesn't it? So it turns out, this book personifies all this as a woman, Lady Wisdom. And we learned about Lady Wisdom in a sermon series we did back in September of 2022. By the way, it's still up on our church YouTube page if you want to check those sermons out. We did that back then. But Lady Wisdom roams around the earth, and she makes herself available to anyone who's willing to listen. Lady Wisdom, she doesn't reserve her tremendous advice for the rich or for kings or for only we high-class folks on the east side of town, like all of us are, right? Like, Lady Wisdom is available to anyone who will listen. She's willing to share her chokmah with anybody, anytime. And is that good news? That's really good news, isn't it? Because again, chokmah is of unimaginable value. I mean, we're talking about the key to life here. How to live the good life. The questions we should all be asking. How to develop your skill and to be good at life. And get this. In the Bible, chokmah is even broader than you think when you think of the word wisdom. Check this out. So the word chokmah, it's not only about the mind in the Bible. The word also refers to someone who's really good at something, like really good at a craft, maybe a designer or a builder. So if you're really good at something, maybe architecture or designing bridges or working with iron, well, you were said to be a person of chokmah. Pretty cool, right? I mean, you can have this in several different ways. And how can you tell if someone actually has it? So what's your little wisdom meter? Like what's that set on? How can you tell if somebody has wisdom? Well, Proverbs tells us. You show you possess it when you put it to work and develop the skill of making a good life. In other words, the outcome of your way of life demonstrates if you have it. You can't fake it. Now this invisible, powerful force, it's almost like, I almost picture it like one of my favorites, the Force in Star Wars, of course, right? I mean, let's go. It's like, the Force is with you, Luke. Use it wisely. It's like, chokmah is with you, Trinity person. Use it wisely. That's sort of the point, right? That's the power of wisdom. And so now you've seen this little idea a bit more up close. My question for you is this. Is anybody willing to say, hey, I need some wisdom in my life? Anybody with a raised hand willing to say I need some wisdom in my life? Probably most of us, except for you who have it all figured out. Probably a couple of us here. But we need wisdom, don't we? Like, yep, I need some wisdom. Sign me up for that. Yes. Indeed. But before we look at the specifics in just a few moments, I need to say one more important precursor, one more important thing about chokmah. Pay attention here, especially if you're new to all this. Maybe you've just come in here for the first time today and you're like, man, I don't even know what a Proverbs or an Ecclesiastes is. I don't know any of this stuff. Listen, if you're new today, this is especially important for you. This is so big, what I'm getting ready to say. In biblical thought, Chokmah isn't some impersonal force. Chokmah is an attribute of God himself. So in Hebrew thought, your journey to becoming wise begins with what the Proverbs calls the fear of the Lord. The fear of the Lord. This is where this whole Star Wars thing sort of breaks down, really doesn't work, all right? This is where the Buddhist idea of wisdom does not work. The Bible is clear about exactly where you can find this amazing thing. Wisdom, Chokmah, it starts with the fear of the Lord. The fear of the Lord, Proverbs tells us. It's this joyful respect for God and his rule and his reign. It's this loving what God does. It's the fear of the Lord. The fear of the Lord is like that. A joyful respect for God and what he does, the way he works in the world. It's an agreement with him as to his definition of good and evil, what he says. Now, all of us have seen different versions of good and evil, right and wrong, in our land over the past few years. We've all seen that. We've all tasted it. We all get that. And as we all know, there are many versions of good and evil staring us in the face. And the fear of the Lord means agreeing with God's version, the real version. And that's where Chokmah begins. True wisdom means learning God's boundary lines and being happy with them and trusting that his way is the best way, that God's way is the best way, trusting that God knows what's best to do things in the best way. So, if you were to flip through the book of Proverbs, you'd find all that we just discussed in the first 9 chapters. And you're going to read it this week, aren't you? Let's go. So the first 9 chapters is all that. Chapters 1 through 9, that was the sermon series we did back in September of 2022. And then from chapter 10 all the way through the end of chapter 31, the end of the book, you see tons and tons and tons, a lot of you know this, just tons of little pieces of advice. Just great little pieces of advice. How to apply Chokmah to everyday situations you face. And so let me just give you a couple of examples. So you get little verses like this. Proverbs 15:1, here in my notes. It says this, it says, a gentle answer deflects anger, but harsh words make tempers flare. Just a little nugget of wisdom, but profound. I mean, if you answer someone gently, it's going to be better than if you answer someone harshly. Good to know, right? Anybody ever learn that the hard way? Yeah, good to know. How about this other example? Here's Proverbs 15:17. I love this one. A bowl of vegetables with someone you love is better than steak with someone you hate. Hey, I love steak. Veggies, not so much. But that's true, isn't it? That's true. Good advice. Then there's this little piece of awesomeness. Check out Proverbs 17:28. My dad taught me this one when I was little. It saved me a lot throughout the years. Even fools are thought wise when they keep silent. With their mouths shut, they seem intelligent. You ever learn that? I got to tell you, man, that's saved me so many times in my life. When in doubt, just smile and nod and don't say a word. You'll seem intelligent even when you don't have a clue. It's amazing. It's amazing. Now, those are just little samples of the practical wisdom of this book. Again, I challenge you to read the entire book this week, 31 chapters of greatness. We're moving to the next book next week, so read Proverbs this week. It's a beautiful, beautiful book. But there are some themes to the book that are just awesome. Awesome thing. I'm looking for my notes here. Keep going. I got my notes down here. No, we're not frozen. Good. Here's what I want to do right now. All right? Thank you. I want to focus on 3 themes in the book. 3 major themes that I've been praying would be a blessing to you. 3 ideas that have the power to make you wise in your life, to give you Chokmah, the most valuable substance there is. Because it turns out Lady Wisdom is willing to show us the way, to keep us walking straight, to help us avoid the blindness of the curved road. So 3 themes that this book returns to time and time again. So write these down. Here's the first theme. Life is more complicated than you think, so seek wisdom. Life is tricky, isn't it? Have you found that out yet in your life? There are tricks to life that are not obvious. No one is a natural when it comes to mastering life and living well. When I was school age, I remember this so clearly. I thought you'd figure everything out when you got to be an adult. Remember that when you were a kid? Like, once you're real old, like 30 and above, you'd be a master at life. I remember that so clearly. But here's what I found out. That's not the case. Have you found that out yet? Like, in some ways, life gets more complicated. It's hard. It gets more complex, not less. And so, just like learning to perfect a sport or a skill, you need a manual or a rule book or a set of YouTube videos, something when it comes to life. Especially because life is more complicated than you think. Let me demonstrate to you the nature of the complexity of life so you can see this. This just goes beyond what we think. So, I love Proverbs 26:4 and Proverbs 26:5. So just check this out. Here's Proverbs 26:4. It says this. It says, don't answer. Everybody say the words, don't answer. Come on. Don't answer the foolish arguments of fools, or you will become as foolish as they are. Easy enough to understand, right? And helpful too. It's like, hey, don't stoop down to the level of a fool. It's contagious. It'll get you. Just let it go. Don't go there. It's not worth your time. Don't even answer a fool. But it gets more complicated than that. Look at the very next verse. I'm not talking a chapter away. I'm talking the very next verse. Look at verse 5. It says this. Say these first few words. Can we do that? Say it. Be sure to answer, nice job, the foolish arguments of fools, or they will become wise in their own estimation. Now, it's like, that's the exact opposite advice. You caught that, right? That's the exact opposite. Do you see that? Be sure to answer a fool. That's verse 5. Don't answer the fool. Verse 4. So which is it? Do you answer a fool or do you not answer a fool? You feel like a fool right now? I mean, it's complicated, right? This is what I mean. Life is more complicated than you think. This isn't a contradiction in the Bible. This is intentional to press into your understanding. It's complex. And I'm not talking here to the person who doesn't even get the basics, like the meaning of the individual verses. I'm talking to people who are already sharp, who know not to stoop down to the level of a fool and so on. So most of you in this room, you're already smart. You look great. You look smart, right? However, even for folks who know quite a bit about life, life is still more complicated than you think, which is exactly why you need to continue to seek wisdom. So what gives here? Answer a fool or don't answer a fool? Which is it? Well, here's the answer. It takes wisdom. Wisdom often isn't black and white. Wisdom isn't usually a simple yes or a no. Wisdom takes the situation into account. It accounts for the many variables in any given moment. And that's just one example. That's just one example. But the point is, you need this. This is here for you. Just like finding a friend who has every answer to some aspect of your life, Lady Wisdom is here for you. Life is more complicated than you think, so seek wisdom. That's the first thing. But what else? What other big picture lessons can we glean? Well, here's a second theme. Check this one out. It's this. It's foolish to try to cheat life, so live well. It's foolish to try to cheat life, to try to get away with things. From taking an extra forbidden cookie out of the pantry while your parents are asleep, or while your wife is asleep. Either one. To cheating on your taxes, to selling someone a car with a hidden defect, on and on and on. We have 100 opportunities a day to try to cheat life. But wisdom knows this. There's a cause and effect nature to life. There's this you reap what you sow kind of reality that, friends, it's inescapable. And over again, the book of Proverbs warns us about this. Let me give you an example. All right, here's Proverbs 14:4. Where there are no oxen, the manger is clean, but abundant crops come by the strength of the ox. Now, this little proverb, it's profound. Maybe you're like, what does this mean? I don't get it. Well, here's the idea. If you don't have an ox in the barn, life is so simple. You don't have any poo to clean up. There's no mess to worry about. There's no foul odors. There's no hired hands and managers to deal with, people to organize. I mean, if there's no ox in the barn, everything's organized, nice and clean. Your life is simple and easy. However, you won't have abundant crops that way. You won't make a good living. Why? Because abundant crops come through hard work and getting messy. You see that? You need that ox to be successful in your occupation. You need the managers and the hired help. You need to endure the mess and the headache and the complication in order to be successful. So you can have one or you can have the other, but you cannot have it both ways. Hard work and messes, great success. Light work and simple, little success. In other words, work ethic. Work ethic. Being willing to push further and experience more headaches for greater success. Or just staying where you're at. No more messes, nice and clean, but less success. In other words, the point is this: you can't cheat life. And it's foolish to try. Now maybe you're like, wait a minute, I have found an exception. I know how to cheat the system when it comes to this thing in particular, money and all that. What if somebody gets rich through like an inheritance or something? Aha! Right? Like they didn't work hard for it. It was just given to them. They're rich without all the hard work and mess. And so, this doesn't work after all. This proverb is only like partially true. Friends, I'm telling you, you cannot cheat the system. You cannot cheat the life that God has set in order. This is a primary message of the Proverbs. So what about it? What about the person who's rich without earning it? Well, here's the deal. Unearned riches are unbelievably dangerous. Unearned riches are often a vicious trap. For one, very few people, by the way, get rich that way. It's tiny compared to the hard work method. And then also, unearned riches are often like poison. They have the power to ruin your life. Just Google the sad stories of most lottery winners. Or just find someone who had a rich parent and ask them what it did to their family when the inheritance came and how it impacted their siblings and all the family harmony. If you don't handle such riches with extreme care and by being extremely generous and open-handed, they can destroy your life. But the point is this, it's just one example. Friends, you can't cheat life. You can't beat the cause and effect nature and the principle of life. So don't try. Instead, choose to live well in the fear of the Lord. I was listening to this interview with a clinical psychologist not long ago, and this guy's had over 30 years experience of intense counseling with people. He's not a Christian, but his decades of experience with people, it's given him a lot to say. And one of the things that he said emphatically when I was listening into this little podcast was this. He said, believe me, you never get away with anything. He was like, here's what he said, there's always hell to pay when you make an evil choice. Now, I'm not trying to be foul-mouthed there. That was exactly what he said, and I was struck by just how correct He was without even knowing it. That's profound, friends. It's foolish to try to cheat life. So instead, choose to live well under the fear of the Lord. No use cheating. Deep down, we all know the truth. Wise choices over a lifetime produce health, joy, and even wealth quite often. And wisdom reveals this to us. Over and over and over, the Proverbs illuminate this principle of hokmah. That's the second overarching principle of the book. And then finally, one last theme. One last theme is this. So true. It's fatal to be right in your own eyes. So look outside yourself. Whew. Proverbs 16:2 says this, all the ways of a man are pure in his own eyes, but the Lord weighs the spirit. Oh, how easy it is to swallow the fatal pill of self-trust. The danger of self-trust. This is a lesson some people learn later than others in life. Some never learn it. To trust your own self, to your own impressions, your own eyes. Friends, it's often fatal, and you've got to know that if you're going to avoid the traps of life. So here are some phrases to watch out for. I got a few phrases in mind to give you as like little blinking, like flashing problems, right? If these ever come off your lips, kick yourself or do something painful to keep you from repeating it, all right? So here's a phrase. When in doubt, I just go with my gut. Like when in doubt, I trust my gut. You ever said that? It's just like, what now? So if you're looking for advice or someone says, hey, just go with your gut. Friends, listen to this. When you hear that, run. Your gut is good for one thing, and it's not making decisions, all right? Here's another one to avoid at all cost. You hear this all the time. Just be true to yourself. Like, do what deep down you want to do. Like, do what you want to do. It's like, whew, when you hear that, danger is just around the corner. Like, you're getting ready to get sucker punched by life when you hear that. I mean, if I was always true to myself, I'd eat pizza and M&Ms 3 meals a day and follow it up with a 2-liter of Mountain Dew to wash it all down. That's what being true to myself looks like to me. I don't know about you. So be careful at what you hear all around you in your day. But then, what is the right move? If that's the wrong move, like, who should you listen to? Like, who is the right voice if not yourself? Well, this is the last proverb that we'll look at today. This proverb holds the key to that question, our final theme. This beloved proverb, so powerful, you should memorize this. Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. Pure gold. Trust in the who? Lord, with all your heart. Do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways, acknowledge him, and he will make straight your paths. Friends, so often in life, you need a perspective outside of you to guide you and to help you. And if you just do what's natural, and if you just trust you won't make it. The me reflex literally has the power to kill you in certain moments of your life. It can cause you to move in circles rather than straight lines. It can cause you all sorts of problems. And listen, you've got to wrestle this to the ground and decide who you will trust. You've got to wrestle this to the ground. I'm going to tell you a story to illustrate this. This is how important this is. So I grew up in the great state of Kentucky, which meant, here's what this meant, among other things. It meant snow and ice and slick roads and danger most every winter. Anybody miss that? No, keep your hands down. That's ridiculous. No, we don't miss it. So here's the deal. So my dad, he always taught me the intricacies of driving on slick roads. So I was always pretty good at it. But I remember one time in college, my roommate and I, we were heading off campus to do something, and it was like super slick. Like lots of so black ice in lots of spots. Now, if you don't know what black ice is, Google it. All you need to know is it's a terrible, slick spot on the road that's invisible. That's black ice. Now, at one point on our little trip, we're driving along, I'm driving, and Brian looks over at me and goes, "Hey, Jay, I think you're going too fast." And I was like, "Come on, man. I got this. Are you kidding me? I know how to drive in this stuff. Like, I'm good at this." And right about that time, there was a slower car, like way up ahead, and I saw it. And so I pressed on the brake a little. And instantly, we began to skid. Here we were at 45 miles an hour. I remember it like it was yesterday, except now we were sort of like sideways. You know what I'm talking about here? Like sort of like little catty corner kind of sideways deal. And Brian looks over at me and he whispers, "We're dead." That's what he says. He goes, "We're dead." And right about that time, like this cold sweat pops out of my forehead because I think he's right. It's not going good for us. It's a pretty serious road, and there's a huge like drop off on this side over here. And so, but right about that time, as time slowed down, I remembered the words of my dad, who taught me never use your brakes when you're on ice. And as time again, as it slowed down and the danger ensued, I literally had to fight my own reflexes. Everything in me wanted to push the brake harder, right? I need to stop, thus I'm going to push the brake harder. That's logical, right? And so everything in me wanted to push harder on the brake because that's how we're just trained to think. Need to slow down, push the brake. But my dad's voice was in my head. Let off the brake. Just take your foot off the brake. And finally, after what seemed like an eternity, especially to Brian, I'm sure, but because it's even worse when you're not in control, right? But finally, after what seemed like an eternity, I did. I literally pulled my foot off the brake. And we straightened back out, and we were just fine. There we go. But the point is this. Is that competing voice in your head? The voice of what you want to do as a reflex almost, just from being a part of this world, and the voice of your Father over against that voice. Those two voices are in your head. And the question is this: which one will you listen to? Who will you follow? You going to follow you and push the brake harder? Or are you going to follow God? Friends, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Do not lean on your own understanding. This is Hokmah, friends. This is wisdom. And over again, Proverbs shows us this. Don't be wise in your own eyes. Look to the Lord above. You know, the book of Proverbs, it's like no other book in the Bible. So helpful to us as we figure out how to navigate life and live well. And this first book of the wisdom literature, it's amazing. Again, here they are. This first one it's absolutely amazing. It's like this, I picture Proverbs like this super smart young teacher who has every answer to every tricky question in life. She tells you that you reap what you sow. She tells you there's a cause and effect nature to life. She tells you you cannot cheat it. And she tells us that wise choices over a lifetime produce health, joy, and even wealth at times. Wisdom, like a secret force in the universe, is the key to happiness in a life that works well. Book of Proverbs, beautiful book. But just a heads up, next week we're going to look at the second book of wisdom, Ecclesiastes. And just a sneak peek, its author, well, he's not so sure that life is as neat and tidy as the young lady of Proverbs The shrewd man of Ecclesiastes has noticed a glitch in the system, and he's not convinced life always works the way it's supposed to. He's a bit more skeptical. So come back next week for part 2 to see what he has to say. Let me end this way today. Let me end with one more surprise, and I'll explain it like this. A few years ago, I was watching an incredible movie with our family. It was this incredible mixture of like a mystery and a love story. And the entire movie heads to this amazing ending where you think all is lost, all hope is gone, and things are going to end terribly. And then after you're sure it's over, something unexpected happens in this movie we were watching. And the main guy, who's been part of the movie like the whole time, he's been sort of clumsy and sort of like a weird side character. In the end, he's revealed to be the hero. It's like he was disguised, but in the very end, we see he was actually the hero the whole time. Almost as if he's been unmasked. I mean, I have to admit, I didn't see it coming in the end. My wife probably did. Guys, is your wife like that? She always figures out the movies early. It's like, don't talk to me right now. I want to know for myself what's going to happen. But here's what happened. It was like, wow, that's awesome. I was like, way to go, Frank. That was his name, Frank. Like, Frank was the hero. Who knew? But friends, here's the deal. For centuries and even millennia, people have studied Proverbs and Lady Wisdom and how the book of Proverbs personifies this attribute of God, Chokmah, Sophia in Greek, wisdom. And readers have long wondered, biblical interpreters have long wondered if wisdom so described in this book, so personified, might in fact be a veiled reference to Jesus Christ. Many people through the centuries of biblical thought have made that connection. I mean, could it be that wisdom personified is in actuality the second person of the Trinity, our Lord Jesus himself? Could it be that wisdom unmasked is Jesus Christ? Now, I don't know with certainty if wisdom in Proverbs is describing Jesus, but I do know this with certainty. Friends, wisdom finds its completion in Jesus. Can I get an amen for that? Wisdom finds its completion in Jesus. Friends, Jesus is the Logos, the Word of God, the wisdom of God. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. The fear of Jesus is the beginning of wisdom. And so the question is, would you follow him today? This week, as your reflex says one thing and he says something else, would you choose to listen to his voice and let off the brake and thus save your life? Or maybe it's this, would you receive Jesus today? Maybe you're here in this room or again online and you know you're not in Christ. And you know you need to bow your heart before Jesus and trust him with your life. Friends, the wisdom we all need, it starts with a real and personal relationship with wisdom himself, Jesus Christ. It's where it all starts. It's where real life begins. So would you just pray with me for a few moments? Would you just bow your heads for a moment? We're going to pray for God to bless his word. Father, I'm so thankful for the word of God. I thank you for our Bibles that are just invaluable. Because life is hard, God. And we need your help. God, we're full of all sorts of reflexes that are not what you want for our lives. So I pray, God, you would, by the power of your Spirit, moving in all of our hearts, give us the desire to listen to you. Thank you so much that you are the author of wisdom. May we live well under the banner of Jesus Christ. In his amazing name